Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome to the messengers in our home. Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners. Welcome to the messengers in our home. Tonight we're going to talk about chapter 27, the Slanderer. And we will find out where and how this person is connected to the story of Alfredo and Ismalia. Hello, Mackenzie.
Hi, Francisca. And hello, dear friends of Kardec Radio. Welcome back to another chapter of the messengers in our home.
So before we start, let's take a moment for a deep breath to let go of our days and to elevate our thoughts to the higher spheres, filling our hearts with gratitude for our life, for this moment that also is an excellent opportunity to learn and to grow. Dear Mother, Father God, Creator of the universe and of our yet small hearts, we thank you for this opportunity of being gathered in your name, learning about your laws and the wisdom that is behind the functioning of the universe. The many things that still seem to be a mystery to us. But the more we learn, the more we know, we find out that the stories and connections we have to other spirits throughout many lifetimes are logic in the end. And that wherever mishaps happened, there too will be new opportunities, new chances to make up, to learn to love, and to be fraternal to each other sooner or later. And so we thank you so much for having this program, this online study, where we can connect to people all around the world and independent from where we are right now, where we live, have access to this knowledge and the opportunity to feel your love, dear God, for all of us. That is behind your laws, behind your justice. I would like to welcome the good spirits of Kardec Radio. Grateful to them as well for their loving support, their kindness. And may we feel, through listening to this program, their intuition, their work behind the scenes, so to speak, in supporting us, in lifting our spirits, and in helping us on our journey each and every day. And with your permission, we now would like to start our meeting. And so be it. So without further ado, let us now listen to the reading of chapter 27. Enjoy.
Chapter 27, the Slanderer. While Alfredo was indulging in instructive conversation with a number of his subordinates, Aniceto called us over to a small isolated structure and said, "Time for another lesson." We went over to a few chambers that were separated from one another. Our instructor opened the door to one of them, and we saw a madman who seemed deeply upset. He gave us an expressionless look and screamed loudly. Aniceto greeted him respectfully. "How are you today, Paulo?" I sensed that his words emitted a certain magnetic flow, and the patient showed a profound change. He suddenly quieted down. He was calmer as he sat down, although he was still shaky and skittish. "Have you been feeling any better, Paulo?" our guide kindly asked, touching him on the shoulder. At Aniceto's physical touch, the patient seemed more rational and replied, "I'm getting better, thank." Seeing that he had hesitated, Aniceto spoke in a firm tone of voice, as if he wanted to help his weakened will. "Finish it." The patient made a tremendous effort and concluded, "Thank God." As I was observing his suffering in indecision, I remembered the patients in the chambers to whom Narcisa offered her loving care. Perceiving my thoughts, my mentor explained, "Can you see the difference between those who are asleep, those who are insane, and those who are suffering? We don't have any of the first kind in Nosso Lar, and most of the unstable ones being treated in regeneration feel cruel anguish. We have to realize, however, that those who moan and suffer, wherever they may be, are actually getting better. Every sincere tear is a blessed indication of renewal. The mocking, sarcastic, or disturbed patients who do not show their pain are worthier of pity because they remain numbed in a strange rigidity of mind." And pointing to the sick man, he affirmed, "Paulo is a patient who is on the way to real improvement. He still doesn't have a clear awareness of his situation, but he is already weeping and suffering from the memories of his unhappy past." I listened closely. I remembered that the patients brought daily to Nosso Lar by the Samaritans were indeed suffering tremendously. Those who were not undergoing actual atrocious afflictions displayed a strange fear of the dark. The only spirit whom I had seen there and who was completely unaware of her own misery was the poor vampire that had been refused refuge in the chambers of rectification. With no qualms at all about making the patient a guinea pig, our instructor suggested, "Concentrate your visual abilities on Paulo." Encouraged by my previous experience, I focused all my powers of observation on him. Little by little, his mental screen began to take shape. It seemed to be formed of dense nocturnal darkness. I was surprised to see several forms moving about on it, and I was even more astonished as I saw several figures of women emerging. Among them was the figure of Ismalia, looking as though she were ill, weak, and anxious. A few desperate-looking men also passed by. Alfredo himself was among them, looking tired and prematurely aged. I heard mysterious voices. Curses and blasphemies rained down on Paulo. The women seemed to be shouting accusations at him, and the men looked like ferocious stalkers hiding in the sick man's strange inner world. As I watched the figures of Ismalia and Alfredo moving about on that dark screen, I couldn't contain my curiosity and interrupted my detailed examination to ask our guide, "What is this? I am aghast." But before I could say any more about my overwhelming amazement, Aniceto replied, "I know. You're surprised at seeing Ismalia and her husband in the patient's memories. And seeing my perplexity, he continued, "Do you remember Alfredo's story? This is the false friend who destroyed his home. Paulo didn't commit only that one disgraceful act. He also poisoned the spirits of other women, betrayed other friends, and destroyed the joy and peace of other homes as well. These desperate memories of the highly afflicted Ismalia and the desperate Alfredo are images created by the Slanderer himself. Our friends at this station have evolved. They have moved beyond the borders of bitterness and have escaped the monsters of hate. Today, they are clothed in light. Nevertheless, as punishment for his guilt, Paulo sees them as he imagines them to be. Criminals never manage to escape universal justice because they carry the crime they committed with them wherever they go. In the physical realm, as well as here, the real landscape of the spirit is that of the inner self. In fact, we live according to the innermost creations of our soul. Noticing that I was having a hard time grasping this, Aniseta continued after a brief pause. For a clearer explanation, let's recall the crucifixion of the Divine Master. We know that Jesus entered into sublime glory after the supreme sacrifice on Calvary. However, we still frequently see him hanging on the cross, martyred by our wrongs and flogged by our whips, because our inner vision compels us to. The condemnation of the Master was a collective crime that will be with us until the day we dawn the divine light of redemption. His explanation couldn't have been clearer. I felt like I was facing a noble revelation. Duty is full of blessings of trust, but death carries the ghosts of exaction. He replied in a grave tone. Regaining my composure, I asked, "But did Paulo come by chance to this station?" "No, he didn't. He was brought here by Alfredo himself, who felt he needed to discipline his own soul. Although our friend is now in charge of this house of love, he disengaged himself from the world under intense vibrations of hate and despair. He suffered greatly in the beginning, although he was never abandoned by his devoted, selfless wife. However, he was unable to see Ismalia until he finally managed to disentangle himself from the manifestations of hate. After receiving help in Campo da Paz, he understood what he needed to do. As soon as he had acquired some merit, he interceded for his unfaithful friend and went looking for him out in every corner of the abyss. Alfredo so nobly dedicated himself to his self-improvement that he earned the position of administrator of this aid station. He brought his ward along with him and currently treats him like a brother. But you mustn't think that he achieved this spiritual victory just because of the fact that he wanted it. He wanted it, sought it out, and nourished it. Now he has it. He has been conversing with Paulo daily for many years. First, he approached the patient with the need for reconciliation. Next, as a charitable person. Later on, he gained understanding by comparing their situations. Then, he felt compassion, and soon thereafter, sympathy. And now, he has achieved true fraternity, the sublime love of a brother for his ex-enemy. After a short pause, he spoke again, enthusiastically. As you can see, Jesus' lesson, knock and it shall be opened to you, is very broad. On the plane of the flesh, we insist on knocking at the door of outward things, looking for favors and advantages. But here, we have to knock at the door of our inner self to find virtue and true illumination. Vicente, who until now had remained silent, asked, "So, there's no telling how long Paulo will have to stay here?" Our instructor made a meaningful gesture and concluded, "Soon he will return to earth. Ismalia has made innumerable intercessions on his behalf, and when his full reason returns, she does not want him to feel humiliated at having been helped by his victims. One of the other sisters, the one who was slandered by him, has already returned, and Alfredo's selfless wife has asked her to receive Paulo as her son as soon as the opportunity arises." Translator's note: to know more about the vampire spirit mentioned by Andre in this chapter, please see chapter 31 of the book No Solar. So, as you all heard, we just read and listened to the reading of chapter 27, The Slanderer. And since you already know what we're going to talk about, I just want to remind everyone that if you don't remember Alfredo's story, you can always go back and re-listen to the old episodes or to the previous episodes of The Messengers in Our Home, or if you want to go back even further, you can always go back and re-listen to the whole book of No Solar. We had all the episodes reading and making a discussion and commenting on all the chapters of No Solar. So you just need to go to KardecRadio.com, and there you can find the links to not only to this show, to this program, The Messengers in Our Home, but you can also find all the other programs of Kardec Radio, and naturally, and also all the programs that we had when we recorded No Solar in Our Home as well. So why am I saying this? It's because naturally, being follow-up to No Solar, it is very interesting that we are all up to date on reading No Solar and also this book, The Messengers, so that we get a real sense of what's going on, of what happened, why it happened in this chapter specifically, and that's why I'm mentioning a little bit more right now. Andrea will talk about Narcisa, will mention her name, will mention a vampire, which we talked when we studied the book No Solar. Aniceto or Andrea will also mention the chambers of rectification, and so it's all related to what the knowledge that we acquired once we read and studied the book No Solar. So it's highly recommended, if you haven't done so already, to go and read the books No Solar and The Messengers, or listen to our show, and so you will be in the knowing, as we say, but you will know much more about the whole story. But more importantly than knowing the story, as we keep saying here, it is very important for us to really understand that the story of Andre and the story of all the characters, of all the people, all the spirits in these stories, is for us to really look at them, make a connection to them, and see ourselves in them and put ourselves in their shoes. See, what if it were me? What would have I done, right? What have I done? What would I do if I were in the same situation? So that I can get the teachings for ourselves, right? For myself, and then act and change upon having this knowledge. Well, what is the usefulness of a knowledge if we only have it in our head and we never put it to practice, especially in the case of No Solar, the messengers, and all the Spiritist message, if we don't put it into practice in our own lives, changing our behaviors to be a better person, to become more connected to the higher spheres, to the good spirits, knowing a little bit more about Jesus' teachings, and more and above everything else, loving God above everything else. So it's just a quick reminder for us to keep studying, and we thank you very much for returning week after week to listen to these teachings, to listen to these readings, and to this conversation on these chapters and on these very, very important messages for our hearts and for our souls. So tonight we're talking about chapter 27, the Slanderer, right? The person, or a man, in this case is a man, right, that lies, but that it has deep malice in everything that he does in this specific case. And we already know that the person is named Paulo, and Alfredo is not the one who's going to talk to us about this in this chapter, but rather it's going to be mostly a conversation between Aniceto and Andre, right? Although Vicente shows up close to the end of the chapter to ask and also a very important question. So as we saw last week, Alfredo was talking to some of the people that work for him in the colony, right, in the aid station. And while Alfredo is still talking to them, Aniceto looks at Andre and Vicente and say, hey, it's time for another lesson. So let's go and learn something else while we are here. So we cannot waste time when we have the chance to learn, when we have the chance to appropriate the knowledge, so that we can use it in our own lives, and we can use it in the works that we are going to perform, that we are going to do once we get to Earth. So they walked away from Alfredo to go to a specific place, and then Andre describes that when he opens the door, when they open the door, when Aniceto opens the door, they see this madman, and it looks like that he was very, very, very and deeply upset. He screamed very loudly, but Aniceto just asked him respectfully, "How are you today, Paulo?" So, what is interesting about this question is that, as per Andre's description here, it doesn't look like that Aniceto was startled by what he just experienced. Maybe as if he was already expecting what was going to happen. But he acted respectfully, right? And he greeted him respectfully. Andre, observing the situation from a little bit afar, right? He senses. He doesn't say that he looks, that he sees what's going on, but he sensed it, that these words, the way Aniceto spoke, emitted a certain magnetic flow, and that magnetic flow influenced the patient. So, made Paulo to become calmer, right? And then Paulo sits down. However, he was still shaky and skittish. We all know the power of words, but more importantly, more than the words themselves, is how we see it, how we say it, right? With what intentions we say it. We can use a very, very beautiful word, but say it with such hatred or with such despise that the other person will hear the word, but there will be something wrong with it, because it will come with a very, very, sorrowful feeling or regretful feeling, hateful feeling associated with that word. So it's not the word itself, but how you say it. Here is both things, right? Because Aniceto asks, "How are you today, Paulo?" So it's a respectful phrase in itself, but it's filled with a different kind of emotion. It's not just the curiosity of the question, but is a loving expression. Is Aniceto here, apparently by what Andre describes once again, is filled with that kind of fraternity, with that kind of real interest in how the person is feeling, not just out of pure curiosity, but imbued, right? The question, the proposition is imbued, is infused with that love and care of a person that really wants to help the other one. He didn't answer anything, and Aniceto goes and asks again, well, different question, but have you been feeling any better, Paulo? And he touches Paulo, Aniceto touches Paulo on the shoulder. And if the words can have power, not only can have, but have power, right, in the way we say it, when we touch another person that we feel that we have the possibility of doing so, right, touching on a hand, right, shaking hands, or touching on the shoulder, just like Aniceto did, if we have inside of ourselves that feeling of sending love, right, to the other person, that person will feel and will receive that touch in a different way. So I can see it very clearly here how Aniceto is probably, right, I'm not saying because Andres said this, but it is as if Aniceto is actually given passes, right, like we use the laying on of the hands, but doesn't need the touch in itself, but only just the proximity, just the way he speaks, the way he embraces him with his words, with his action, with the touch on the shoulder. It is as if Aniceto wants to give Paulo a little bit of energy so that he can improve more and more, as we already know that he's been improving over the last few years. And then once Paulo is touched on the shoulder, he starts to answer. So I'm getting better, thank. And on the book, we see that there are he wants to say something, but he can't say it. It is almost as if he doesn't want to say it, or he's unsure of saying it, right? Or he's hesitant of saying. And then Aniceto looks at him and says, finish it. What do you want to say? I want to hear you say it. Please finish it, But he encourages him, once again, using his voice, using what he has inside of him to encourage the other person. And then Paulo makes a huge effort, and then he says, thank God. So he says it in a way as if he's reluctant to say it, but he finally says it. And although the indecision is there, he mentioned God, right? He is able now to say it, right? To thank something that's outside of himself for the improvement that he's been getting so far. And maybe he's full of guilt, and he doesn't want to well, he knows that he needs to be humble at this point, right? And he's suffering because of everything that he did, but he wants to thank somebody, and he doesn't even want to mention God's name, but then he says, thank God. Finally, he says, thank God. Andre looks at that situation, and as I was saying in the beginning, he remembers, right, some of the passages that he went through while he was in No Solar, right, in the chambers, to whom Narcisa was offering her love and care. So when he looked at Paulo, he remembered some of those patients. And if we read the book again, we will see that there are a number of patients there, right? Francisco and a few others. But naturally, we only know a few of them because Andre spent there a year. And we only stayed with him until I don't know, maybe 3 months, and then there were probably 9 more months of work. So imagine how many other spirits he met there, how many other stories he touched, how many other stories he learned, and how many other people he really met and knew their stories and their situations. So he doesn't mention anybody here by name. But naturally, Aniceto is right there, right by his side. And since Aniceto can look at the person, and because of his farther advanced mental abilities, he can see or sense what Andre is thinking. And he looks at Andre and says, well, now that you're remembering stuff from No Solar, can you tell the difference, right? Can you see the difference between those who are asleep, and in the past few chapters we've been talking about those who are asleep, right? And then we had Ismalia's prayer and so on. Then we have those who are insane and those who are suffering. So Aniceto here tries to make this difference between those who are asleep, those who are insane, and those who are suffering. And he says, well, in No Solar, there aren't those who are asleep. There are some of them are insane, and some of them are suffering. The ones who are asleep, they are really, really not improving, because if they are asleep, they are not actively doing something. The ones who are insane, sometimes they are not as well improving themselves. Why? Because sometimes they are so detached from the situation that they don't know what's going on, or if they are hiding from themselves the situations that they went through, what they did, so they don't blame themselves and they don't feel the pain. Well, they are in pain, but not because of what they did specifically, conscientiously, but because the situation is there, so they start blaming somebody else for what's going on. However, and that's what really, really interesting here in what Aniceto says, he says that we have to realize that those who moan and suffer, wherever they may be, are actually getting better. So those who moan and suffer, why? Because now this moaning and suffering mean, in this specific case, that they are aware of what happened to them, why it happened to them. So they can start crying, weeping, shedding tears. And if these tears are sincere, meaning that they really know that they are suffering, but the cause of their suffering was not because another person made them suffer or are making them suffer, but they are suffering because their conscience hurts due to everything or anything that they had done in the past. So Aniceto says that every sincere tear is a blessed indication of renewal. And in this specific case, apparently what he wants to say, if we hadn't read the chapter so far, but we read the chapter, so what he wants to show us is that although Paulo is suffering, although he looks like he's distressed, it looks like that he is in real pain, this shows us that he is in the path of reconstructing his own life, of reconstructing his path, of walking down the path of rebuilding, of renewing himself. Those who are still mocking, sarcastic, those who are mocking, who are sarcastic, or who are disturbed, and that they do not show their pain, these are the ones that we really need to look at them in a very specific way, because these are the ones who are still not aware of themselves, of why they are in the situation that they are. They are numbed. That's the word that Aniceto uses or employs here. They remained numbed in a strange rigidity of mind. So it is as if they are closed or enclosed with a mask, right, in a capsule, and they are on the surface, and they can't look inside, so they don't show their pain. One day, this capsule will break, will tear, and once it's torn and they are able to look inside of them and the pain starts coming out, then they will start their process of redemption. Meanwhile, they are the real worthy, the spirits that are real worthy of pity in sense of compassion, because they are still going downwards. They are still not climbing the ladder of renewal, of redemption. So it will take longer for them to reach what they really need to reach. Paulo, as he says right after this, Aniceto says, is a patient who is on the way to real improvement. He still doesn't have a clear awareness of his situation, but he is already weeping and suffering from the memories of his unhappy past. So he already knows what he did, and he is weeping and suffering not because of what others would have done to him, but because he remembers what he did to others. And that's when Andrea once again remembers the time that he was in O Solar, and working with the Samaritans, working with Narcisa, with all the spirits there, Tobias and Lysias, and all the spirits who were there together with him. And he saw a lot of spirits that were suffering just like Paulo is doing. But the only spirit that he didn't see suffering as Paulo is right now is the poor vampire that was, as the translator's note here put at the end of this chapter. You just need to go back to chapter 31 of the book No Solar, and you will read a full account of what happened and who was that spirit that Andre find in trying to come into No Solar, but she is not, that female spirit is not allowed to go into No Solar because she still doesn't recognize the really huge mistakes that she committed while she was incarnated, and she's still blaming all the other spirits and all the other people on earth while she was incarnated for all the disgrace, for all the misfortunes that she is in at that very moment. So other than that spirit, all the other ones that Andre was able to see, they were in more or less in this state as Paulo is, suffering because they remembered and they felt what they did while incarnated, and they recognize that they are suffering due to their own wrongdoings. So while they're still there, Aniceto keeps trying to teach Vicente and Andre what they need to do because of their impending trip to Earth. And he says, concentrate your visual abilities on Paulo. So we have to remember once again that before coming to this trip, they had a small treatment, right, to enhance their vision and their senses so that they could be able, Vicente and Andre, to see different things on the spirits than just the outer surface. So Andre describes that he concentrates and starts looking at Paulo in a different way, and then he starts seeing a mental screen, and we could probably imagine this as being a flat screen or of a TV or a movie theater, and then he starts looking at his mind, at Paulo's mind, and he starts seeing his memories, or starts seeing his thoughts, and what are the thoughts that are really, really making Paulo suffer as much as he is at that specific moment. And then he starts to see this screen as being very dark and a lot of suffering inside of that screen, side of that movie, right? Quote unquote here. He sees a lot of women, but Andre is very surprised when he sees Alfredo and Ismalia in the mental screen, in the mental pictures of Paulo. But they look different, right? Alfredo is kind of tired and a little older. Ismalia, it is as if she is very ill, weak, and anxious, and curses. He hears stuff, mysterious voices, curses, and blasphemies on Paulo, as if these voices are coming down on Paulo at all time. These women that he was seeing, they are accusing him of what he probably did. And when Andre sees Alfredo and Ismalia moving in that screen, he says, "What's going on here? Why am I seeing Alfredo and Ismalia in Paulo's mind? Why does he remember these two fine people, and why are they so sad, and why are they so toned down to what? So I know them, I know Ismalia, I know Alfredo, they are not what I'm seeing in this mental image. Why am I seeing them?" And then he says, "What is this? I am aghast. I really don't know what to think about." And Aniceto says, "Yeah, I know, right? You're surprised to see Ismalia and Alfredo there in this patient's memories." And then it is when Aniceto will explain what actually happened and why he has those memories. And then we would need to go back a little bit to chapter 17, when we heard Alfredo's love story, right? Remember, they were together, Ismalia left the room, and then Alfredo starts telling them the story and how Ismalia is visiting because she doesn't live there. She's not there at all times with Alfredo, but they were married, and then there was this friend of his who were trying to separate Alfredo and Ismalia and created all these huge lies. And that friend, quote unquote, he is not a friend, right? A real friend, was Paulo, right? He was the one who were the cause, or the main cause, to separate them both, right? Or the one who created the whole story. But if you want more details, we have a full episode on that, chapter 17 of this book, The Messengers, and of this program, The Messengers in Our Home. But Paulo, the problem is that was not the only thing that Paulo did. Paulo did this to Alfredo and Ismalia, but he also did this to a lot of different people, right? And that's why he remembers a lot of different women, and all these women are criticizing him, cursing him, saying blasphemies to him, shouting accusations, and so on and so forth. So these memories that Andre, these images that Andre are seeing, are the memories of Paulo, right? And what about Alfredo and Ismalia? Why are they so old, and why are they so weak and fragile? Well, this is how Paulo's memory, or Paulo's imagination, thinks that Alfredo and Ismalia are due to what he did to them. So these are images that are created by his own mind. Alfredo and Ismalia, they grew up. They are out of this situation already. They moved beyond the borders of bitterness, and they escaped the monsters of hate. But Paulo did not. Paulo still thinks and blames himself by all the situation that he caused. And when he thinks of them as if they are still suffering from what he made them suffer. Right? And this is his own punishment. He punishes himself because now that he thinks what he did, he understands that to all actions there are consequences. And if it were not for this, we can try to just make a small adjustment in this story, in this very moment here, so that we can think a little bit different and see how even more terrible would be for Paulo. let's imagine that, well, he sees maybe some of these spirits who didn't forgive him are still pounding on him at all times, accusing him of everything. Imagine if to all these that are still doing this, we added Ismalia and Alfredo, meaning if they didn't have evolved, if they didn't have escaped this hatred, they would probably still be attached negatively to Paulo. And Paulo's situation could be even worse. Why? And we already know, I'm going to talk in a few, but it was due to what Alfredo felt, and due to what Alfredo felt that he needed to do, that he went looking for Paulo to rescue him and to try to be able to help him and to overcome the poisonous fluids of the hatred that was created by Alfredo himself and also by Paulo, right? But, okay, let's go back here. Ismalia and Alfredo escaped the bitterness and escaped the monsters of hate. So now they are trying to help Paulo. However, we don't escape our own conscience. So we carry the crime we commit wherever we go. Depending on how my mind is, everywhere I go, I will carry this inside of myself. And that's exactly what Aniceto tells us. In the physical realm, as well as here, the real landscape of the spirit is that of the inner self. So let's say I am guilty of something, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's say I ate the chocolate that my brother gave to my sister. So it's not my chocolate to eat. I didn't ask for permission. I went there and ate her chocolate. As I'm passing by and somebody screams or yells, "Hey, you stole my chocolate," it is natural, only natural, that I will think that they are talking to me. Maybe I can fake that I'm not feeling. Maybe I don't show exteriorly, but inside my mind, since I am guilty of the crime, quote unquote here, right, committed, I will feel that. So the landscape of the spirit is not what's said outside, but it's what reflected on the inside. So it doesn't matter if we are incarnated or discarnated. This is something that's true, right? So I create that inside of myself, and then I will carry that with me, right? As Jesus says, we carry what's deeply inside our hearts, right? What really makes harm to myself, it's not what comes from into the mouth, but what comes out of my heart from the mouth to the exterior. Why? Because it's what's inside, right? It's my inner life. It's the inner, my inner self that reflects what I really am. So Andre apparently is not understanding this, is having a hard time grasping this. So Aniceto looks at him, understands that he is having a hard time, is going to try to use a different example, and which is a very, very interesting example for all of us. And he uses the idea or the example of Jesus' crucifixion, right? When he was killed on the cross, going on the Calvary. So he says, every time we look at the cross, due to how we perceive what we did as a collective people of the earth to Jesus, we still have that feeling of guilt of what we did to him. And then we will only be able to get out of that guilt, to be guilt-free of this, when one day we dress up with the divine light of redemption, meaning once we understand his message and really say, okay, now I did everything I could and I really follow his teachings. So now I am not guilty anymore of what I did because I, quote unquote here, repaid my debt. And I'm using the word debt here because that's the word or one of the words that Aniceto employs when he finishes his explanation. André says, well, this explanation couldn't have been clearer. I felt like I was facing a noble revelation. And Aniceto says, and I'm going to quote and read the full sentence because it is very interesting. He says, duty is full of blessings of trust, but debt carries the ghosts of exaction. So I am in debt. I am indebted with somebody or with something that I did wrong. I will need to repay that debt back, right? And I'm going to carry the ghosts of that charge with me, of that exaction with me, until I repay my debt. And how do I repay the debt? Right? I repay the debt by being brave, by being courageous, by performing what I need to perform, by fulfilling the duty of a son, of a real son or child of God. And I will be blessed by what I've been doing in following God's teachings through whatever kind of gospel that I want to follow. If these gospels, if these teachings allow me to reconnect with God, allow me to understand that without charity there is no salvation, as Allan Kardec teaches us in the Gospel according to Spiritism. But then comes a question. Before I ask the question that André asks Aniceto, right? I just like to remind everyone once again that it is very interesting and it is very important to us here at Kardec Radio. And since we are here in the messengers in our home, it is very important to us to hear feedback from you guys, right? So if you want to send a message, if you to let us know how are you feeling these messages, what do you think of what we're doing here? Is it being useful to you? What can we do to change? Is there anything that you want to hear more? Is there something that you want to hear less? Do you have any questions? Do you have any suggestions to us? So please feel free to send us any comments you want. Just go to kardecradio.com and there you will be able to find the email, the contact forms that you can send us your suggestions. You can follow us on Facebook as well, so you can send messages to us there as well. So there are a bunch of ways to communicate with us. KardecRadio.com, just go to Facebook. If you have an account there, just search for Kardec Radio. You will be able to find us. Leave your comments, make a suggestion, ask us questions. We are here to interact with you as well. So, going back to the text, André says that he regains his composure, and then he asks, okay, all this story, and why is Paulo here? Did he come to this station by chance? And that's interesting that André is asking this, right? Why did he come there? Why did he go there to this station? And Ismalia is there sometimes, and Alfredo is there also. Yes. Aniceto says, no, he didn't. Of course he was not here. He is not here by chance. Right? There's no chance in the works of God. Right? We are all connected. If we need to solve something with somebody else, we will nature, if you want to call God nature, God, God's laws will find a way to make us be together again. No, if we want to be together, we will seek out each other. If we don't want to be together, we will be put together to solve the differences that we still have to solve, or the differences that we have between ourselves, or among ourselves if there are more than two, right? So, no, it was not by chance, Andre. He was brought here by Alfredo himself. I can imagine Andre's face at this very moment, right? I wish they would make a second movie. Apparently, I read the news somewhere that they're already starting to make a second movie, right? In No Solar #2, meaning the parts of the story of what is here in the Messengers. Hopefully, we will be able to see parts of this story, Paulo, Alfredo, and Ismalia as well. We never know what they're going to use and what they're going to adapt to a movie. But I can imagine Andres' face at this moment, right? Well, Alfredo went there to look for Paulo, but wasn't he? Well, these are all words that I'm putting in Andres' mind or in Andres' mouth. It doesn't say anything here, right? But why did Alfredo do this? Why did he go after Paulo? Wasn't he supposed, quote unquote, here to hate him? And of course, Andre was not thinking this. He already knows better. But maybe it's just me that I still need to get better and get closer to what Andre would really ask or feel at that moment. But Aniceto goes on. Well, Alfredo felt that he needed to discipline his own soul. So he needed to do something. And although now Alfredo is full of love and is in charge of this specific place here, this aid station, but once he died, he was under the intense vibrations of hate and despair. Can you imagine, what happened? And by going back to chapter 17 once again, rereading or remembering Alfredo's story, the way he tells it, we can see how deeply sorrowful he was once he died, because he knew at the end of his life that he had committed a grave mistake, that Ismalia was not at fault. He was at fault. And remembering and thinking that Paulo was the one who caused this, can you imagine how much hate he might have felt at that moment? And that's why I keep repeating, we need to put ourselves into their positions to understand what they felt and that they wanted to change. They wanted to do something. But there will be something very, very interesting that Aniceto will say about wanting something. But I'm going to talk to it in a few once he says it here in a reading. Oh, just another reminder, please have the book with you. It is much easier. It makes it much easier for us to follow and go along and make notes so that you can comment, you can agree, you can disagree, you can make suggestions. You can say, hey, Mackenzie, you forgot this. Hey, Francisca, can you talk about this? Can you read this passage? So it's very important, if you're really following and studying with us, to have the book with you so that you mark, use your highlighter, always have a pen or a pencil. Some people don't like to write on books, but if it's a study book, we need to write it so that we can learn more about the teachings. And this book is full of teachings. You're able to see it, I'm pretty sure. So once Alfredo discarnates, right, he is feeling that hatred and that despair. Ismalia was never left him alone, right? She was always there for him. He was not able to see her, probably, right? And that's what Aniceto tells us here. He was unable to see Ismalia, just as, if we go back to No Solar again, Andre was not able to see the help. Only when he started to pray, he doesn't know how much time, how long it took, that he was able to see the help that was there for him. With Alfredo, the same thing happened. happened until the day that he managed to disentangle himself from the manifestations of hate, probably due to a prayer, probably due to remembering what love really is. Then he was able to receive the help, and then he went to Campo da Paz. After work, after doing, we don't know what he did, he was able to intercede for his unfaithful friend. Remember, in the beginning of Alfredo's story, that man was a friend to Alfredo, or Alfredo really felt friendship and love for that man, for that specific friend, which we know now it's Paulo. Naturally, something really bad happened, so he maybe forgot how much he loved him. Maybe he started, forgetting Paulo, and once he connected the dots, he started hating Paulo. But once he recognized after he died that shouldn't be, or that shouldn't be going, that he needed to change something, he started to look forward to meet Paulo. And then he started to go after Paulo, to look for Paulo everywhere. But only after he had some merit. What is this merit? The merit is showing that you are performing your job, that you are actually and actively improving in your own life, just as we saw with Andre in No Solar, for example, with Vicente probably also in No Solar, right? So he is showing that he really wants and that he really deserves this chance to go after this man that he still doesn't love, but that he needs to improve himself. And to improve himself, he realized that he needs to fix the situation that was created between him and Paulo. So he decides to go after Paulo. He finds him and brings him to where he is. At this moment, when he is able to bring Paulo to the Campo da Paz station, to the aid station, he is already an administrator because of how much work he has put into improving himself. And then that's when comes maybe one of the most important lessons that Aniceto teaches us in this specific case, but that it works for all of us, maybe everywhere in our lives. And he says, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to quote, "But you mustn't think that he achieved this spiritual victory just because of the fact that he wanted it. He wanted it, sought it out, and nourished it. Now he has it." What is this victory, or unquote, what is this victory that Aniceto is talking about? Is that now Alfredo has achieved true fraternity, the sublime love of a brother for his ex-enemy. This is the victory that Alfredo was able to get to. He now has the love of a brother for his ex-enemy. But was it only because he wanted it? No, it was not just because he wanted it. Because we want so many things, right? Maybe we want to not suffer. We want to have this material thing. We want to be happy, right? But what if I want to be happy, but I keep acting the same way that I have been acting that makes me unhappy? It will not make me happy. So wanting is not doing. And that's the lesson that Aniceto wants us to really think about here. He wanted it. That was the first thing. But then he starts to seek it, to go after it, and to persevere on it. That's the sought it out that he says here. But then after that he nourishes it. So he keeps feeding that want, that desire to be a victor, right? To win over the situation, to really show himself, show God that he really wants it. So want in the head is not the same, and it's far from actively acquiring what you want. We need to dirty, quote unquote here, our hands to get the work done. And Aniceto explains how he did this, right? And he separates, or he divides in pieces so that we can feel it. We can feel how Alfredo was able to acquire, to achieve this true fraternity. He says, and I'm going to go slowly here, he has been conversing with Paulo daily for many years. So, do you have a problem with somebody? Do I have a problem with somebody that I want to change it, that I want to do it differently? Paulo had, or Paulo and Alfredo had. Alfredo wanted and was the one able to do something about it. So he decides that I want. He seeks it, and then he starts nourishing it. First thing, he starts to talk to that man daily for many years. First, he approached the patient with the need for reconciliation. That was his need. So he approaches him with the need of reconciliation. Then he approaches the man as a charitable person, as somebody that wants to do good to the other. Later on, after approaching him because I want to do good to the other person who is suffering, now I gain understanding by comparing our situations. So now I start to reconcile. I want to reconcile. Then I notice that I'm better than the other. I'm in a better position than the other, so I'm able to help the other person. However, when I start to think that I'm helping the other, then I start to understand that I am more or less, maybe more like the other than I ever thought about it. Then I feel compassion about the other. I start feeling what the other one is feeling. If the other one is suffering, I start suffering together. Not as a way of punishing myself, but as a way of becoming closer and into contact with the other person's feelings. The feeling of empathy, of touching each other. And soon thereafter, sympathy. Empathy is the idea of coming into contact with the other, feeling what the other one is feeling. Now I'm above this. I'm going over this feeling of empathy and becoming sympathetic to the other person. Now, remember, he was hateful. Then he starts talking as if he's going to help the other one, understands the situation because they compare both of them. Then he feels compassion. He feels empathic. He senses the other. He knows that the other is suffering and he doesn't want the other to suffer anymore. Now he becomes sympathetic to the other. It's not love yet. But then, after becoming sympathetic, after having sympathy for the other, with the continuation of this, with the nourishing the soul, with that love, with that compassion, with that sympathy, with that charity, we acquire true fraternity, the sublime love of a brother for his ex-enemy. I know maybe it's way too much to swallow, but I highly recommend that we stop and really think about these steps that Alfredo took to convert what was once a love that became hatred, to go back to that love of the beginning, right? reconciliation, charity, understanding, compassion, sympathy, true fraternity, love. That's the path. To do this requires time, requires effort, requires constant nourishment. It is as if I want to plant a tree. I need to take care of that tree daily, doing whatever it needs to be done at that specific date. I have a dog. I want to take care of a dog. I want to have a dog. I need to take care of the dog because the dog does not take care of itself, of himself or herself. I need to take care of the dog. I need to nourish this love. I need to put food. I need to put water. I need to walk the dog. I need to exercise the dog. And while I'm doing this to the dog, and I'm doing this to myself as well. I know it's a bad comparison. It's not the best comparison. But if I want to recreate a love for a person that now, for a connection that is now hateful, whatever that is, this is a great path to go on. So this teaching of Aniseto's teaching is really, really great for all of us. And then we start to get close to the end of the whole conversation, and naturally Aniceto will try to wrap it up, right? And he says, well, this is another way of looking at that lesson from Jesus when he says that, knock and it shall be open to you. Here, and sometimes once we discarnate, we say we knock on doors, but we knock on the doors to outward things, right? So sometimes it is much easier, looking for favors and advantages. So we knock on those doors, and that's what we're going to get, favors and advantages. However, these are things that are not forever, that these things don't last. Once we recognize that these things don't last and that we need to have something within, that's the door we need to knock. We need to knock at the door of our inner self to find virtue and true illumination. Once we start looking on the inside to find this, we will be able to go outside and help more and more and more. And then we're going to receive more and help more, receive more, and then comes the virtuous circle of renewal, of becoming a better person, of becoming a true follower, a true disciple of Jesus. At this moment, Vicente decides to open his mouth. He was just listening. We can see how different Vicente and Andre are, right? Andre wants to talk, wants to ask, wants to this. Vicente is more of the one that usually stays more quiet, observing and thinking and so on. But now he decides to ask. So, how long Paulo will have to stay here? Do you know what's going to happen to him? And the instructor, Aniceto, looks at them and say, well, everything is arranged now. He will return to earth, as we all did, as we will all do sometime in the future, as we will go back to the spiritual realm once we discarnate. And just to finalize, he says, well, Ismalia, which was connected to Alfredo and to the whole story, to Paulo and to all those spirits, is the one that's more spiritually and morally evolved. So she is maybe coordinating the whole thing. She has made innumerable intercessions on his behalf. So she is worried about him, and she wants to take care of him, just like Alfredo is doing his part as well. So she is worried that once he recovers completely and that Paulo is able to recognize her, to recognize Alfredo, that he will become even guiltier, right? He will be, he will not be able to recover completely, or he will be distressed even more. So she doesn't want him to know this, that he was being helped by them. So she arranges his reincarnation and asked one of the women that was slandered by him to receive him as a son so that they can readjust. And then maybe later on they will all be able to be joined again together. And instead of that relationship of hatred that was developed by his slanders, a new dawn will arise where all these spirits connected through hate will still and finally be connected through the power of love. And that's our wishes, right? Our wish to every one of us, that if we, by any chance, have anything against someone, that we maybe, and naturally I can't tell how to do it, I have to be the one who say, I want to do it. I need to seek a way of doing it, and I need to nourish it. So maybe start talking to that person, saying something, sending good notes, saying good things about that person, praying, sending our prayers to those people that have bad feelings towards us, not having bad feelings towards another person, so that we start by reuniting, as Jesus, our dear brother, teaches us. Go find your enemy and solve the problem while you're still here with that person. Because if you separate yourself from him or from her, you don't know what can happen later on. And we just saw it here in Paulo's story, Paulo, Alfredo's, and Ismalia's story, how bad and how terrible it can be if we allow these things to go on after this specific life. So let's try to make true friends, to have the true sense of fraternity towards those who don't like us, that hate us sometimes. And let's not allow ourselves to hate others. If others hate us, there's nothing that we can really do about it. Well, we can work it and try to approach, but it's their feeling. But if it's inside ourselves, let's try to think about it and say, how can I get rid of this, and how can I transform this feeling from hatred to love? Follow Aniceto's advice, and it is a path. Maybe there are other paths. This is one that works. If you find another one and you want to send us a note, just let us know. We will be here to hear. We will be here to receive your messages, and we'll be very, very glad to hear you, to read from you, to know that you are out there listening to the messengers in our home and to all the other programs in our station at KardecRadio.com. I hope that this week's program, that this week's episode, that this week's chapter has touched you somehow, and I am very wishful that next week you will rejoin us at the same time to listen and talk to us at KardecRadio.com in our program, The Messengers in Our Home. Have a great week, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.